Waiting in the New York airport, Max reflected that this wasn't the most pleasant way to spend an evening. He watched the boarding procedures for what he hoped was his flight home to Charlotte. Max, along with his two sisters, were the owners of a small pharmaceutical company, a legacy from their father. The company's profitability rested on a series of specialized medications developed by his father, valuable yet not widely prescribed, which offered steady income but limited expansion opportunities. With both parents deceased, Max had just spent several days in New York City negotiating the sale of their company to a large pharmaceutical corporation. Earlier that day, the deal had been struck, with the final paperwork left in the hands of the lawyers. He'd hoped to return home that night, but it wasn't looking promising. The final Charlotte flight was overbooked, and he was third on the standby list. He decided against calling his wife Camila, uncertain of what to tell her. Nursing his second gin and tonic at the airport bar, he kept a close watch on the gate, pondering the deal and the considerable sum, exceeding $10 million, that he and his sisters would split. This financial boon, coupled with a lucrative transition period with the acquiring company, guaranteed a transformed lifestyle for him and Camila. Their twin daughters were already away at Duke, juniors in college, and the tuition bills were a constant drain on his resources, a burden soon to be lifted. As the boarding process concluded and the final passengers were ushered onto the plane, Max's luck turned. The display screen updated, and his name moved up the standby list. He tossed some cash on the bar, gave the bartender a thumbs up, snatched his briefcase and duffel bag, and hurried towards the gate. An agent handed him a boarding pass, quickly explaining that a group of 4 with online check-ins hadn't arrived, freeing up seats for Max and 2 other fortunate travelers. He rushed down the jet bridge with his newfound companions, and upon finding his assigned seat, realized he was in first class. A positive sign, he thought. He'd made the flight, a day early, and in first class no less. Perhaps the pharmaceutical deal truly was a blessing. As the plane door closed and they began to taxi, he decided he deserved another drink. He ordered a gin and tonic and drifted off, dreaming of a future where he and Camila could always enjoy the luxury of first class. The jarring landing brought him back to reality. Eventually, he found a taxi for the ride home. He had driven his truck to the airport a few days prior, but now, exhausted and slightly intoxicated, it was too late to ask Camila to pick him up. Living several miles outside of Charlotte, the taxi ride provided ample time for another nap. The driver had to rouse him upon arrival. Max paid the fare generously, stumbled out of the cab, still somewhat dazed, and as he turned towards his house, he stopped dead in his tracks, instantly sober. A gold Mercedes was parked in front of his side of the garage. It appeared to be a particularly elegant model, but then again, all Mercedes seemed stylish to him. The house was dark. It was well past midnight. Max stood frozen for several minutes. He had spoken to Camila from his lawyer's office around noon, and she hadn't mentioned any visitors, especially not at this hour. Trying to dismiss the unsettling thoughts creeping in, he pictured a welcoming scenario where he could soon be nestled beside a warm, sleeping Camila. But his mind refused to cooperate. Slowly, he walked through the passage between the garage and the house, unlocked the door, and stepped into the quiet home. He moved deliberately through the kitchen and up the stairs to their bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, as if not expecting guests. Max pushed it open and entered. Then, everything stopped. His mind went blank, his breath caught in his throat, even his heartbeat seemed to pause. He witnessed the unimaginable. Camila lay naked on her side of the bed, one arm draped around another man who slept peacefully beside her, a slight smile playing on his lips. Max stood there for what felt like forever. Finally, his mind began to work again. He focused on Camila's hand resting on the man. They were both snoring softly. The sound, once a comfort, now shattered his heart. Until this night, he had found solace in the sound of Camila's snoring, a soothing indication of her peaceful slumber. He often fell asleep to that gentle purr. But now it was gone, irrevocably. He would never hear that snore again, never share a bed with her again. Despite his anguish, Max started to think clearly. He took note of the man's neatly folded clothes on a chair Max himself had sat in countless times. Anger began to simmer within him. He pulled on his pants, grabbed his wallet and car keys, and paused, considering his options. The thought of retrieving a tennis racket from the closet and confronting the man flashed through his mind. He even considered confronting Camilla. Both impulses offered a sense of immediate gratification, but also the risk of serious repercussions. Another idea formed. He took out his cell phone and began taking pictures. As his plan solidified, Max finished documenting the scene and collected the man's clothes and shoes. The man was considerably larger than Max, taller and heavier. A tennis racket wouldn't be wise, even in the heat of the moment. Clutching the clothing, Max took one last look at his wife, his once cherished partner, and the mother of his children. He hardened himself against the love that had sustained him for over 2 decades. Dry-eyed, he left the bedroom. Descending the stairs, Max clicked the key fob, and the Mercedes doors unlocked. He placed his briefcase and duffel bag inside before sliding into the driver's seat. He wasn't a man who cared much for luxury automobiles, but as he drove, he found himself appreciating the Mercedes' smooth handling. After a mile or so, he pulled over and examined the man's wallet. It contained the usual cash, business cards identifying him as Franklin Thompson, a senior sales manager at a local Mercedes dealership, and a driver's license with a Charlotte address. If the man had a family, Max realized he could cause considerable problems for him, and potentially for Camilla as well. But for now, exhausted, Max decided to find a nearby motel and get some sleep. Camilla, a generally cautious individual and aware of her husband's sharp intellect, had managed to conduct her affair with Franklin Thompson for almost 5 months without raising Max's suspicions. Max is still in New York, she thought the following morning, lying in bed with Franklin. He satisfied her physically, though not quite to the same degree as Max. Too much like a car salesman, she mused, deciding it was time to end the affair. Franklin's increasing possessiveness, particularly his insistence on spending the night, had become a problem. Despite Max's presumed ignorance, having another man in their marital bed felt deeply disrespectful. She planned to call Franklin later that day and firmly, yet gently, break things off. With that decided, she headed for the shower. Back in the bedroom, as Camilla dressed, Franklin emerged from the shower, wrapped in a towel. He paused, then asked, "Where are my clothes?" "I didn't touch anything," Camilla replied. "Where were you going tonight?" "I left them folded on the chair here. They're gone. Did you move them to the guest room?" She began, but he was already hurrying down the hall, returning moments later, empty-handed. "No, they're not there. They're nowhere." Camilla, growing impatient, suggested, "Maybe you left them downstairs last night after we came in?" "No, I'm sure I didn't, but I'll check," Franklin said, leaving the room and returning quickly, a look of panic on his face. "Camilla, my car's gone too. Someone was here. They took my clothes and stole my car. What the hell is happening?" Camilla struggled to comprehend the situation. How could his clothes and car simply vanish when they had been home all night? Could someone have broken in? She sat heavily on the bed. "Franklin," she whispered, her voice catching. "What if it was Max? What if he came back from New York while we were asleep and took your things and your car?" "Damn," Franklin muttered, sinking onto the bed beside her. "We need to find out where he is. It could be him. But if he's still in New York, then it's a break-in. We have to call the police. I need my stuff and my car back." "Oh, damn, the car—" His voice trailed off, imagining the potential consequences, ranging from bad to disastrous. "If we involve the police, they'll ask whose car it is, and it's in my wife's name for some tax reason. I'll call his office," Camilla said, her mind racing. "His secretary arrives very early. She should know where he is." Camilla dialed Max's office number. Despite the early hour, Max's secretary answered promptly. "Max Torque's office. How may I help you?" "Hi, Sheila. It's Camilla. I know it's early, and I'm not sure where Max is. He didn't call last night. Have you heard from him?" "Camilla, it's still quite early here. The team in New York worked late yesterday, so they'll likely start late today. I spoke with Max around 6:20 p.m. yesterday evening before I left. He mentioned they were making good progress and might finalize the deal today." "He said that?" Camilla asked. "That's good to hear. So he's still in New York, right?" "Yes, I'm certain he is. I expect to hear from him once they're back at the lawyer's office. Should I have him call you?" "Yes, please, but only if he has a moment. I know how important this deal is," Camilla responded. "Understood? Bye," Sheila said, and they hung up. Camilla turned to Franklin. "Max is still in New York, so we should call the police and report a break-in and car theft." "Camilla, what are we going to tell them? That my clothes were stolen from your bedroom and my car was stolen from your driveway? What the hell? This is a disaster. Franklin exclaimed. Okay, I get it. Let's think this through. How about I drop you off at home and you report the theft as happening there while your wife was taking the kids to school? Maybe skip the stolen clothes. Those would be harder to explain than a missing car, she suggested. Yeah, except yesterday I told my wife I was going to Atlanta for a meeting on the new Mercedes S-Class and wouldn't be home until noon, he said. Okay, we can wait until noon. When you're back, you can say you drove home, left your keys in the car for a quick stop inside before going to the dealership, and your car was stolen while you were inside, she proposed. You know, I think that could work. I could also say my wallet was in the car and got stolen too. We can hang out here for a few hours, maybe take another shower together, Franklin suggested, his tone suggestive. Franklin, Camilla responded, her tone serious. Okay, yeah. I need to call work and take a sick day, he said, finally grasping the gravity of the situation. Camilla, who worked as a paralegal in a small law firm, found her job rather tedious. She stepped into the hallway to make her call. When she returned, she found Franklin back in bed. Tempted, she thought of Max and her recent resolve to end the affair. Ultimately, she decided against it, declining Franklin's advances. She said, making no move to disrobe, I think it's time to end this. We've had our fun, but last night, it could have been Max. We're lucky it was just a burglar. Let's find some clothes and maybe grab breakfast somewhere. Franklin looked at her, briefly considered arguing, but ultimately conceded that she was right. They'd been fortunate and shouldn't push it. He inwardly agreed, recalling with a faint smile another attractive middle-aged mother who frequented the dealership. Okay, I agree. It's been good. So, how about some clothes? He said. This proved more challenging than anticipated. Franklin was 50 pounds heavier and 4 inches taller than Max. Eventually, Camilla located a pair of worn sweatpants that sort of fit, fashioning makeshift adjustments with string to hold them up. She also unearthed a faded sweatshirt, now tinged pink from a careless wash, which she further modified with trimmed sleeves and widened armholes. Despite the urge to comment on the outfit's resemblance to clown attire, she merely offered a faint smile at Franklin's expression. They decided to kill time watching television until it was appropriate to head to Franklin's house. Earlier that morning, around the time Franklin discovered his missing belongings and vehicle, Max arrived at the address listed on Franklin's driver's license. It was a pleasant home with a small bicycle leaning against the garage wall. Max sat in the Mercedes, contemplating, still remarkably tearless. His night at the motel had passed quickly, and he hadn't gone for his usual morning run until dawn. Surprisingly, he didn't feel any worse. Perhaps he was still numb. He approached the front door, holding Franklin's wallet with the driver's license visible. He rang the bell. A young woman in her 20s, attractive but slightly disheveled, answered. Max wore a suit he'd purchased the previous day in New York, now wrinkled, with a rumpled white shirt and no tie. Despite not looking his best, he hoped he didn't appear threatening. He held up Franklin's driver's license and gestured toward the gold Mercedes. Before he could speak, the woman slammed the door. Then, she reopened it a moment later, cell phone in hand. I have 911 ready to dial. Tell me my husband is okay. Ma'am, I have a picture on my phone of your husband and my wife in bed last night, both undressed and sound asleep. Honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with your husband or mine. If you want to call 911, go ahead. I'll wait in the car. They stared at each other until her expression softened, and she opened the door wider, starting to say something when a voice from inside the house interrupted. Mommy, wait! Stay there! I'll be right back, she said, turning toward what Max assumed was the kitchen. He heard voices, hers and at least one child's, before she returned, offering him a cup of coffee. I hope you take it black. I need to get the kids ready for school and drop them off. Honestly, I trust you more than my husband right now. You can wait here until I get back and then we can talk. Sure, okay, Max replied. Seems we're both in a similar predicament. He settled into the living room. Soon, the woman reappeared with 2 children, introducing him as Dad's friend, before leaving with them. Max sat quietly, sipping the mediocre coffee, considering calling his office, but ultimately remaining seated. When she returned, she hurried upstairs briefly and then reappeared, looking more composed, her hair brushed, and a touch of color on her lips. She extended her hand to Max. Sorry for the chaos earlier. I'm Molly Thompson, currently married to Franklin Thompson, who it seems is involved with your wife. Max couldn't help but chuckle at her phrasing, a brief moment of levity in the otherwise heavy atmosphere. You've summed up the situation perfectly. I'm Max Torque, and my wife's name is Camila Torque. Let me explain what happened last night. As Max recounted the events, Molly began to cry. I'm filing for divorce from Camila, Max concluded, and these photos will definitely help with the settlement. I can send them to your phone if you think you might need them. Yes, please. Keep them, Molly replied, her eyes dull. Max reached for his phone, then hesitated as Molly continued. Hold on. I don't want those images seared into my memory. You keep them. If I ever need them, I'll call you. Okay, of course, Max agreed. I probably won't be keeping my current job or residence for much longer. Here's my lawyer's contact information. Feel free to reach out if you need the photos or any help with the divorce proceedings. Thank you, Molly said. But what should we do now? Are you returning the car? Waiting for Franklin to confront him? He's a big guy. Despite putting on some weight, he's supposedly in Atlanta for a car meeting overnight and should be back this afternoon. You know, I'm rather fond of this car. I've never driven a Mercedes before. I think I'll keep it until someone insists otherwise. As for your husband, let's just call him Idiot for now. He may... Molly chuckled and Max joined in, both needing the release. Actually, the car is registered in my name, Molly disclosed. For tax reasons. More depreciation, I think. Idiot put it in my name since I use it more. She paused, thinking. Since it's my car, I can give you permission to drive it. And if you get stopped, the police can call me to verify. Max appreciated the plan but held back, sensing Molly wasn't finished. And one more thing, she added. There have been a lot of burglaries in our neighborhood lately. You have Franklin's, Idiot's, wallet and clothes, keys and clothes, she said. If the spare key we hide in the backyard is missing when he arrives, he might try to break in. And if our security system is set to instant alert, he'll attract some unwanted police attention. Molly, Max said, I think I'm falling for you all over again. You're amazing. Okay, let's stay calm. Idiot. Franklin can wait until this afternoon when the kids and I get home from school. I'll pick them up and take them to the park for a while. Let's give him more time to get into even more trouble. Whatever happens, keep me updated, especially if he gets into trouble with the police. And call me when you need to return the car. I don't want you getting into any trouble. We're good. Now you need to get going, so do I. Max drove off in the gleaming gold Mercedes, pondering how much the same model in a more appealing color might cost. Molly handed him the permission slip, and he assumed she would retrieve the hidden key, set the alarm, and be gone for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, Camilla and Franklin arrived at his house around noon. She dropped him off quickly, as if avoiding contagion. He approached his front door, hoping it might be unlocked because Molly was home, yet also dreading her presence. It was, of course, locked. He hurried around back to the rock where they kept the spare key, only to find it missing. Oh crap, he muttered, scanning the back of the house, considering his options for breaking in. He tried the back door, but it was also locked. Left with few choices, he contemplated breaking a window along the rear wall, settling on the family room window due to its larger size. He broke off a branch from a nearby tree for leverage. Barefoot, he needed a way to avoid the broken glass. Grabbing 2 chairs from the porch, he positioned them beneath the window, planning to climb carefully over them and into the living room. Taking a few deep breaths, he braced himself. Franklin hurled the branch through the family room window, which shattered satisfyingly, immediately followed by the piercing shriek of the home alarm system, a stroke of bad luck, compounded by a passing police patrol car. Earlier that morning, Molly had alerted the police about the potential for break-ins in the neighborhood. Damn it! Franklin cursed, scrambling over the chairs to enter the house and disable the security system. But he wasn't fast enough and... Police! Stop right there! Slowly step away from the house. Hands up! An officer commanded. Franklin glanced back, seeing 2 officers with weapons drawn. He complied, managing to scrape his legs as he climbed down from the chairs and backed away. Officers, I can explain, he began, but one of them quickly handcuffed him, ignoring his attempts to clarify. His rights were read aloud, and he was asked if he wished to make a statement. Yes, this is my house, and, I didn't have a key. So I broke in to get some clothes and call my office, Franklin explained. The officers eyed Franklin's tracksuit, perhaps thinking clown clothes, and one asked for identification. No, not on me right now. You see, I lost my car and all my clothes, so I just needed to get inside to find some real clothes, Franklin continued. How did you lose your car, sir? One officer asked. Well, I stayed at a friend's place last night, and this morning the car, wasn't there, Franklin stammered. It just disappeared. Huh. Have you reported it missing? Maybe you left it somewhere? The officer pressed. Franklin hesitated. He didn't want to reveal his whereabouts or why he hadn't reported the car missing. But going to jail for trying to enter his own home wasn't appealing either, especially in the uncomfortable handcuffs. Then, an idea struck him. You could call my wife, she can confirm who I am. And maybe you could take me to my office? Someone there can help me get some clothes. Knowing that dealing with dealership drama was preferable to jail, Franklin gave Molly's phone number to one of the officers, who called her. Franklin could hear part of the conversation. Ma'am, this is Officer Riley from the Charlotte Police Department. We're at the address he provided. The location. We have a man here claiming to be your husband. He attempted to break into your house because he lost his clothes. And, yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We will, of course, do that. Thank you, ma'am. The officer turned back to Franklin. The lady says her husband is in Atlanta and anyone breaking into her house must be a burglar. She hopes we throw you in jail and toss away the key. But, Franklin was nearly in tears as the officers escorted him to their patrol car. Meanwhile, Camilla arrived at her office half a day late but determined to catch up. Thoughts of Max still lingered. She tried calling his cell phone but received no answer. She then dialed his office number again. Hello, Sheila. It's Camilla again. I'm starting to get a little worried about Max since I still haven't heard anything from him. Have you? No updates yet, Camilla. He's likely still in New York with the lawyers, but it's unusual for him not to call. Since you're concerned, I'll check on him and get back to you shortly, Sheila replied. All right, thank you, Sheila. You're the best secretary ever, Camilla said. A few minutes later, Camilla received a call back. Camilla, it's Sheila. I spoke with a secretary at the law office. Max left late yesterday, hoping to catch the last flight to Charlotte. I called him, and he asked me to let you know he'll call you later. Okay, thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Camilla said, a pit forming in her stomach. Meanwhile, Max drove the gold Mercedes to a divorce lawyer recommended by Fred Thomas, his longtime business attorney. Trusting Fred's referral, he hoped for the best. Mr. Torque, please have a seat. Ms. Reinhardt will be with you shortly, the secretary informed him. Max settled in, finding the lawyer's office, neither ostentatious nor shabby, somewhat comforting. Before anxiety could take hold, a middle-aged woman with dyed red hair entered. Mr. Torque? Max nodded as she introduced herself. I'm Anna Reinhardt. Fred spoke highly of you. Let's discuss your situation in my office. They moved to her office where Max accepted a cup of coffee from the secretary and began his story, explaining his discovery of Camilla's infidelity, his desire for a divorce, and the need to protect his assets, particularly the proceeds from the company sale. He omitted the Mercedes incident, unsure how Anna would react. Max, may I call you that? Anna asked. Max agreed. Here's some relatively good news given the circumstances. Fred mentioned your ownership of the company predates your marriage, making those shares separate property. Your wife has no claim on them or their proceeds. Keep them separate from any joint accounts. Understand? I believe so, Max replied. What about your home, retirement accounts and such? Well, it's less favorable there, Anna explained. Given your higher income, expect alimony for several years. We might be able to mitigate contributions to retirement by adjusting the alimony. It's not ideal, but it avoids future complications, especially with splitting retirement funds later. Your children are college-bound, so no child support there. You're okay with covering their college expenses? Yes, that works, Max confirmed. What about the house? You and your wife need to decide. You can sell it and split the proceeds, or one of you can buy out the other based on its current appraised value. After what I witnessed last night, I definitely don't want the house anymore. I doubt Camilla can afford to buy my share, so selling it seems like the best option, Max decided. All right, I'll prepare the necessary paperwork accordingly. The divorce petition is fairly standard, so I can have it ready for you early tomorrow. If you'd like, we can serve her tomorrow afternoon and propose a settlement next week. Wow, that's pretty quick. Max stammered. Max, listen to me. If there's any chance for reconciliation, perhaps counseling or some time, Anna suggested. No, Max interrupted. It's just a shock right now. Less than 24 hours ago, I was happy, eager to share news of the company's sale with my wife. Now I'm here discussing divorce. But we have to move forward. I'll figure out how to handle this. Okay, Anna said. If you change your mind, just give me a call and we can reassess. Max thanked her, paid the fee, and left the office. Walking back to the gold Mercedes, he thought about the events with the man from last night. It reminded him that he had promised his secretary to call Camila. He dialed her number. Camila answered from her law firm office. "Camila, it's Max. You called and were looking for me." "Oh, Max, thanks for calling. I missed you. Where are you?" "I'm here in Charlotte," Max replied. "Max, when did you get back?" The pit in her stomach twisted. "Last night, Camila. I got back last night." The pit grew heavier. Camila leaned back, struggling to breathe, let alone speak. "Max, I think I should hang up," she said. "No, Camila, please," Max said. "Can we meet somewhere? I need to see you, just for a few minutes." Max hesitated. This woman was his love, the mother of his daughters, the most important person in his life for over 20 years. "Okay, Camila, Center Cafe at 6:20. The pain intensified. Camila reluctantly agreed. The Center Cafe held sentimental value. They had first met there with friends long ago. Over time, it became their special place. Now, she felt a wave of anxiety. Max had suggested it, and she had to agree. "Max, I'll be there, and please understand, I'm sorry and I love you," Camila said, her voice breaking. Max hung up. Camila sat, tears streaming down her face, the pain deepening. Camila arrived early at the cafe. Max hadn't arrived yet. She ordered a glass of wine and reflected on her self-perception. Her initial sexual experiences were with robust football players in college. Though she had flirted in high school, it was the football players who made her feel vulnerable, holding her down. When Max came into her life, she thought she had overcome those feelings. He was everything she needed. Strong, loving, a great father, a good provider. That should have been enough. But on a flight back from the West Coast, everything changed. Max was on a business trip, pitching a new medication to a pharmaceutical company, and she had accompanied him for the weekend. Flying back alone on a red-eye, she sat next to a burly man, the coach of a local NFL team. They chatted, drank too much, and she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. She awoke to find his hand between her legs, under her skirt. Now, reflecting on that night, she knew she should have screamed or pushed his hand away. But she hadn't. And the guilt, the absence of it, troubled her. She had only felt relief when Max returned later that week, and she had recovered, both physically and emotionally. The coach left after one season, but not before introducing her to a player from the practice squad. He wasn't a star, but like the coach, he was dominant in bed. She felt grateful when, "Thanks," Camila said, a pit forming in her stomach. Meanwhile, Max drove the gold Mercedes to a divorce lawyer recommended by Fred Thomas, his longtime business attorney. Trusting Fred's referral, he hoped for the best. "Mr. Torque, please have a seat. Ms. Reinhardt will be with you shortly," the secretary informed him. Max settled in, finding the lawyer's office. Neither ostentatious nor shabby, somewhat comforting. Before anxiety could take hold, a middle-aged woman with dyed red hair entered. "Mr. Torque?" Max nodded as she introduced herself. "I'm Anna Reinhardt. Fred spoke highly of you. Let's discuss your situation in my office." They moved to her office, where Max accepted coffee and began his story, detailing his discovery of Camila's infidelity, his intention to divorce, and his desire to protect his assets, especially the proceeds from the company's sale. He omitted the Mercedes incident, uncertain of Anna's reaction. "Max, may I call you that?" Anna asked. Max agreed. "Here's some relatively good news given your circumstances. Fred mentioned your ownership of the company predates your marriage, making those shares separate property. Your wife has no claim on them or their proceeds. Keep them entirely separate from any joint accounts. Understand?" "I believe so," Max replied. "What about your home, retirement accounts and such?" "Well, it's less favorable there," Anna explained. "Given your higher income, expect alimony for several years. We might be able to offset retirement contributions by adjusting alimony payments. Not ideal, but it prevents future complications, especially when splitting retirement funds. Your children are in college, so no child support. You're comfortable covering their college expenses?" "Yes, that works," Max confirmed. "And the house? You and your wife need to decide whether to sell and split the proceeds, or one buys out the other based on the appraised value. After last night, I definitely don't want the house. I doubt Camila can afford to buy me out, so selling is probably best," Max decided. "All right, I'll prepare the paperwork. The divorce petition is standard. I can have it ready tomorrow morning. We can serve her tomorrow afternoon and propose a settlement next week." Wow, that's fast. Max stammered. Max, if there's any chance of reconciliation, perhaps counseling, Anna suggested. No, Max interrupted. It's just a shock. 24 hours ago, I was happy, ready to share the company's sale news with my wife. Now, this. But we need to move forward. I'll figure it out. Okay, Anna said. Change your mind? Call me and we'll reassess. Max thanked her, paid, and left. Walking to the Mercedes, he thought about the man from last night. He'd promised to call Camila. He dialed. Camila answered from her office. Camila, it's Max. You were looking for me. Oh, Max, thanks for calling. I missed you. Where are you? Charlotte? When did you get back? The pit in her stomach twisted. Last night. The pit deepened. Camila leaned back, struggling to breathe. Max, I should hang up. No, Camila, please, can we meet? I need to see you, just for a few minutes. Max hesitated. This woman had been his life for over 20 years. Okay. Center Cafe at 6 on 2. The pain intensified. Camila reluctantly agreed. The Center Cafe was special. They'd met there. Now, anxiety churned. I'll be there, and I'm sorry, I love you, Camila choked out. Max hung up. Camila sat, tears flowing, the pain a gnawing ache. Arriving early, Camila ordered wine, reflecting on her self-perception. Her early sexual experiences were with assertive football players in college. Though she'd flirted in high school, the football players made her feel vulnerable. When Max entered her life, she thought she'd overcome that. He was everything she needed. Strong, loving, a great father and provider. But a flight back from the West Coast changed everything. Max was on business. She'd joined him for the weekend. Flying back alone, she sat next to a burly NFL coach. They talked, drank, and she fell asleep on his shoulder. She woke to his hand between her legs. Looking back, she knew she should have reacted, but she hadn't. The lack of guilt bothered her. She felt relief when Max returned. The coach left after a season, but introduced her to a practice squad player. He wasn't a star, but, like the coach, dominant. She felt grateful when he was traded. Guilt eventually surfaced, and she ended it, wanting to be faithful to Max. She thought she'd put infidelity behind her by the time their daughters left for college. She cherished her rekindled connection with Max. Then, Max surprised her with a new car. Unfortunately, she chose Mercedes, meeting Franklin Thompson. He sold her a car and seduced her. She knew it was wrong, especially since Franklin wasn't even good in bed. Despite past indiscretions, she believed her marriage was strong. She loved Max more than ever. Letting Franklin into their bed was a mistake. Now, she feared the consequences. Hello, Camila. Max's voice startled her. He looked older, a change she blamed herself for. The guilt gnawed at her. Hi, Max. Thank you for being here. I don't even know where to begin. I'm so sorry. Can I ask a few questions? He asked, sitting down. Oh, Max, please. If we have any chance, questions will ruin it. We should go away. Reconnect. Camila, please. You're not thinking clearly. If you can't answer my questions, I'm leaving now. The guilt tormented her, but Camila knew she had to endure. Okay, Max, ask me anything. Do you know what time I got home last night? A strange question, she thought. No, not exactly. It had to be after... She trailed off, anticipating his next question. And do you know what I found when I got home? When I went upstairs to our bedroom? Or what used to be our bedroom? Yes, Max, I know what you saw. It must have been horrible. And it's my fault. I'm begging you, please. Just stop, Camila. Next question. How many men have there been since we got married? If you lie, if I think you're lying, I'm leaving. Camilla's instinct was to lie. Then she realized the risk. The marriage was likely over anyway. 3, Max. 3 men, and I deeply regret meeting any of them. I can see it's over, and I understand. You deserve better. I'd do anything, but I understand if you want nothing to do with me. Call the lawyer tomorrow, Camila. You'll be served. Max stood and left. Camila sat, stunned, then began to cry. Max walked out, remembering meeting Camila there. Was this their last conversation? Closeness, he thought bitterly, had become a curse. Hearing her confess, seeing her with Franklin in their bed, snoring. How could he ever get over this? Maybe 3 faceless men over 20 years with counseling and groveling? Maybe, but that scene, never. Their marriage was over. Sitting in the gold Mercedes, he finally cried. As darkness fell, Max wiped his face, remembering Molly Thompson. She'd said not to send the pictures, believing it would be harder to forgive with visual evidence. He decided to call her, share this thought, and check on the Mercedes situation. "Hello?" Molly answered. "Molly? It's Max Torque from this morning, just checking in and seeing how you're doing and what to do with the car." "Max, thanks for calling. I'm managing. Keep the car for now. Franklin is in so much trouble he won't need it for a while." "Trouble? I hope you didn't shoot him." "No, but he might have preferred that. He got arrested trying to break into our house and took a swing at one of the cops. He's a big guy, and they used a stun gun. Then something happened in jail. He won't talk about it, but I think he was attacked by another prisoner. I refused to speak to him, so he had to call his brother to post bail. Now his whole family knows." "Wow. Molly, I can't say I feel sorry for him, but I do feel sorry for you. I wanted to tell you, you made the right decision not looking at the pictures. If you have any chance of reconciling, those photos would make it much harder." "Yeah. He came home a couple of hours ago crying, apologizing, begging me to let him stay, at least for now. We have 2 little kids, so I'm going to try to work things out, but life won't be easy for him. His own brother, a lawyer, told me to push for a post-nuptial agreement and offered to help. Plus, I'll be managing our finances for a while. Franklin will be on a short leash." Molly chuckled dryly. "Stay strong, Molly. I wish you all the best. When you need to return the car, just call me." They hung up, and Max sat there feeling a pang of envy towards Molly. Maybe Franklin had learned his lesson. Being arrested and charged with assaulting a police officer, combined with his jail experience, might have scared him straight. Max hoped so, for Molly and her children's sake. He drove back to the motel. He had one more task before attempting sleep, calling his daughters, Jane and Joan. "Hi, Daddy." It sounded like Jane. They were twins, not identical, but close. They even sounded alike, attending the same expensive college, both studying nursing. Max often thought he was glad they weren't identical. They were already adept at ganging up on him. It would be worse if 2 identical young women were persuading him to buy a car, stay out late, or fund a spring break trip to Florida. But he also admitted to himself that he enjoyed spoiling them. "Janie? Yes, you guessed right." Of course, there was a 50-50 chance. "What's up?" "Listen, tomorrow's Saturday, and I'd like to invite you and Joan for, well, let's call it brunch. Maybe around 11 unta at that bistro on 4th Street we used to go to." That works for me. Hold on." He heard some muffled noise. "And Joan's good with it too. Can we—" He quickly interrupted, remembering their last brunch when 6 or 7 of their friends had tagged along. "Let's make it just the 3 of us." "Okay, of course," Jane replied. "But tell me, what—" Again, he cut her off, not wanting a difficult conversation over the phone, which was challenging even in person. "Listen, I have to go. See you at 11 unquack. Love you, and tell your sister I love her too. Bye." He hung up, hoping she wouldn't call Camilla, but knowing he couldn't tell her not to. Otherwise, she would call Camila immediately. 11 a.m. Tomorrow would come soon enough. After Max left the cafe, leaving Camilla with his warning to hire a lawyer, her tears became uncontrollable. She had ruined everything: her marriage, her family, her life. Her daughters would find out, her parents, her friends. She would likely lose Max and her home. Poor Max, seeing her in their bed, likely with Franklin aroused, must have devastated him. Her tears continued to flow. Eventually, the waitress approached. "Do you need to use the restroom?" Camilla choked back sobs. "No, thank you." She paid and left, heading back to the house that would soon no longer be hers. Finding some gin, she drank, just the wrong amount. Not enough to pass out, but too much to help her figure out how to get Max back. She fell asleep, hoping for a miracle. Max was at the bistro at 11 hunk the next morning when his daughters arrived. He'd reviewed and approved the divorce petition, then driven 2 hours from Charlotte, using the drive to plan how to break the news. Initially, everything seemed normal. Hugs and kisses, how's school, how's work. They ordered, ate, and had their plates cleared. Then, the real conversation began. "Dad, we know something's wrong," Joan started. "You look unwell. Are you here to tell us you have cancer or something? And if so, where's Mom?" "Girls, I do have bad news, but it's not physical. No one is dying. It's about Mom," Jane interrupted. She did something terrible, didn't she? Oh my God, did she run off with one of her firm's lawyers? Some young, strong guy that Janie or I should be chasing? Both girls burst out laughing, momentarily stunned by the absurdity, until they saw their father wasn't laughing. Dad, no, not Mom. Joan couldn't voice her fear. Girls, listen carefully. Yes, Mom cheated. She cheated on me, but that doesn't mean she cheated on you. Joan, crying, said, Dad, if her cheating is destroying our family, then yes, she cheated on us just as much as she cheated on you. Both girls cried, then Max started too. They stood, trying to hug each other and their dad simultaneously. Dad, let's get out of here, Jane suggested. There's a park 2 blocks away, we'll have more privacy. People were staring, so Max quickly paid, and they walked to the park, a daughter on each side all holding on to each other. Tell us, Dad, Jane said, after they found a bench. We deserve to know how bad it is. She's right, Joan added. We're mature enough to handle this. On the way here, I was trying to figure out how to tell you, Max began. I agree, you're both adults. And, yes, your mother cheated on all of us. I found her at home, in our bed, with another man, and she later admitted there had been others before him. I think I'm still in shock, but she and we can't recover from this. I talked to a divorce attorney, and Mom's getting served with the papers today. They cried again, then fell silent, absorbing the news and pondering their future. Girls, no matter how tough this gets, you need to focus on yourselves and your studies. There's enough money to cover your senior year at Duke, and if either of you wants to go to grad school, I'm confident I can find the funds for that too. But there's a condition. They looked at me inquisitively. I'm happy to pay for your education, but I expect you to work diligently and earn good grades. Yes, what Mom did makes it difficult to concentrate, but you've told me you're adults. Mature, disciplined adults can handle this kind of adversity, right? They exchanged glances, cried again, and hugged me. Yes, Daddy, you're the best, and we won't disappoint you, Joan reassured me, while Jane looked thoughtful. Dad, Joan's right, we won't let you down. But what about you? Will you be okay? What are you going to do? Well, you can think about a lot during a 2-hour drive. First, I want you both to know that what you said doesn't surprise me one bit. I know you'll continue to excel in school, and I'll continue to be proud of you. As for me, what your mother did hit me hard. I could wallow in self-pity, feel sorry for myself, and try to reconcile with your mom. But I realized that's not me. I've spent my entire adult life looking after others. When I started working for my grandparents' company, I took care of them. After they passed, I looked after my sisters as they inherited their shares. Then I took care of your mother, and I've taken care of you girls. It might sound like I'm complaining, but I'm not. The company will be sold soon, which will free me from responsibility for my sisters. Camilla is gone, and you two, I promise I'll be thrilled to help you launch your adult lives. So what? 2 home runs out of 3 in terms of the women in my life? Not bad? That leaves me. And guess what? I see this whole betrayal and divorce situation not as a catastrophe, but as an opportunity to embark on a new life, a life dedicated to taking care of one person. Me. Fine, Dad, really? If you mean that, that's great, Joan exclaimed. Jane was more dubious. Dad, what does this new life actually entail? Working for a different pharmaceutical company? Buying a farm? Good question. I don't have all the details yet, but this new life will be active. I'm going to run marathons, climb mountains, swim the Atlantic, conquer the Alps, go on safari. I have a million things I'm going to do, and guess what? While I'm doing these things, I might meet a nice woman who enjoys the same activities. Who knows? Damn it, Dad, this is amazing! Both girls stared at me, astonished. This wasn't their father. This was some intrepid adventurer. Did you really come up with all of this while driving here from Charlotte, Jane asked. Well, yes, partly. Besides, I didn't sleep much and different ideas were spinning in my head. I mean, I could start drinking and feeling sorry for myself, but instead, I'm going to make the best of this mess. Trust me, I'll be fine, Max. Left his daughters with more hugs, kisses, and tears, then headed back to Charlotte in the gold Mercedes as soon as Max left. The girls called their mother. Hello. A strained voice answered the phone at the Chork house. Joan put the call on speaker. Mom? This is Joan and Jane. We just had breakfast with Dad and he told us some terrible news. What did he say? Well, he mentioned divorce and said it was because of your betrayal. Dad gave us some details, but that's the gist is this. True. Oh, girls? This is complicated. He and I have been married for a long time and this This mistake. Yes, I made a big mistake. Well, more than one, actually, but I'm sure we can get through it. I just need to give your father some time to... Mom? Joan interrupted. Listen, Dad said. Divorce? He didn't talk about fixing things. He talked about cheating. Well, yes. Technically, he's right, but that doesn't mean we can't fix it. I told him I would do anything. Mom? Jane interrupted, I think. You're delusional. He told us that he had already met with a divorce lawyer. He said, there's no turning back for you two. Joan and I don't want to take sides, but you have to face reality, they heard. Tormented breathing on the other end. Joan and Jane exchanged glances, wondering if they should have gone to Charlotte finally. Camilla spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I screwed up and ruined my marriage. I think your father hates me. And he's right. I've done awful things, he told me. To hire a lawyer, and he was right about that too. I'm sorry, girls. I know it's terrible for you too. Mom, don't worry. About us. Joan said we'll be fine. And I know Dad is doing everything he can. You need to take care of yourself. Hiring a lawyer is a good idea, Jane. And I can come to Charlotte if you need us. Thank you, girls. That's kind of you, I'll be. Okay. I just need time to come to terms with what I've done. They hung up. Still unsure of their next steps, Joan said, it's funny, though. It's not really funny. We're more worried about Mom, who caused all this mess, than about Dad. They continued talking and eventually decided not to go home, allowing their parents to deal with the situation without their interference. Camilla sat in her home in Charlotte, a bit hungover from the gin she drank the night before and feeling very depressed. After talking to her daughters, she knew she had to get up, get dressed, and leave the house, do something. She thought, just as she considered buying more. Gin, the doorbell rang. Camilla opened the door to find a young woman standing there chewing gum. Can I help you? Camilla asked. Yes, ma'am. Are you? Camilla Trork? Max Trork's wife? Why, yes, that's me. Why do you ask? Ma'am, you've been served, the woman said, handing Camilla a folder of documents and snapping a photograph. What? Camilla stammered as the woman walked back to her car. Camilla returned to the kitchen table to examine the mysterious folder. When she saw the title of the first document, she almost fainted. It was a petition for divorce. She remembered Max's last words, "Get a lawyer." As she sat there staring at the familiar kitchen she had once enjoyed with Max, she knew the happy days wouldn't return after what she'd done. Camilla was right. She and Max never reconciled after her betrayal. 6 years later, sitting in the ballroom of an expensive hotel, watching Jane dance with her new husband, Camilla mentally drifted back to the past. When the girls were teenagers, life had seemed so difficult. Too many activities, too much teenage angst, and boys who were either too cruel or, in Camilla's opinion, too nice. Max was too busy with his job, and her work as a lawyer was too dull. Life had felt overwhelming then, but now she missed it terribly. She was still at the same law firm doing the same monotonous paperwork. Camilla, here's your wine. Camilla looked at her date, a perfectly pleasant, middle-aged, slightly paunchy, balding lawyer who had escorted her to Jane's wedding and reception. The bride looks lovely, just like her mother. Thank you, Carl, you're sweet, and thanks for the wine. He was a kind man, and she could imagine marrying him if he were interested. But he definitely wasn't Max. She couldn't help glancing across the room at Max. He had just returned from a mountaineering trip to Nepal, and Camilla thought he looked like one of those bronze Greek god statues, tanned, incredibly fit, even more handsome than she remembered. He was smiling and laughing with Joan and her boyfriend, holding hands with a woman as beautiful and fit as he was. Joan had told her that Max met the woman on another mountaineering trip in South America, and they'd been traveling, sailing, and climbing together for several months. Camilla felt sick just thinking about it. Camilla? Carl tried to get her attention. Yes, Carl? Camilla, I think we should leave. You've fulfilled your duties as mother of the bride, and staying here, mooning over your ex-husband isn't doing you any favors. And I dare say, it's not very good for our relationship either. Carl, you're sweet, and you're absolutely right. Let me go say goodbye to my daughters and we'll leave. Camilla hugged and kissed her daughters, wished the newlyweds all the best, and as hard as it was, ignored Max and his stunning girlfriend. Max noticed Camilla leaving and felt a slight pang of sadness for their old times together. As he watched her go, Joan asked him a question. Sorry, Joni, what were you saying? Daddy, Remember that strange-looking gold Mercedes you were driving when you, Jane, and I had breakfast that morning when you visited us at Duke? What happened to that car? Joni, that's a whole story. I won't bore you with it. Let's just say I borrowed that weird gold Mercedes from a friend and ended up giving it back to her. I think she sold it. It was truly an unlucky car. And Max turned to his companion to discuss their next mountain climbing expedition.